So the first thing that we should talk about in the area of that's not secondary, but a foundational piece of theology, and it might sound like linguistics gymnastics at first, but it's not. It is important, and it is a very important distinction, is that God is God. What do I mean by that? When I teach my children, how to read and write, we come to the area of capital letters, and it's a difficulty for a young child, to learn as, we're writing a word or they're writing a sentence, and they'll be writing cat, and they'll put a lowercase c, and then an uppercase t, or an uppercase A, a capital A, and then a lowercase t, and you're like, why did you make that a capital letter in the middle of a word? And, we'll teach them that at the start of a sentence, you put a capital letter. And then at the start of someone's name, you put a capital letter. And there's a couple other places, but the majority then would be lowercase letters. And for them to get that and understand that, it takes some time, but it's important, for English, I guess. In the Bible, we see this thing every now and then. You see the word Lord, for example. And there's the, all lowercase Lord. Then there's Lord where the L is a capital, and then all lowercase. And then there's sometimes where we see Lord and the entire thing is on cap locks. It's all capital letters. L-O-R-D, all caps. There's a distinction there. There's a difference there. That's God. There's also the difference, of the God is God in the sense of when we write about God, as in the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, the God of the Bible, it's a capital G, no matter where it is. There's an importance to that. There's a sense of honor even in writing in that way. In fact, usually in my notes, when I write about God and His people, even the H in the His, I capitalize as this sign of the distinction and reverence for the Lord. Now, throughout history, there has been brought in as idea a number of other gods, many of them. Those would be lowercase g's. And they're not real. The Bible tells us, right, and this is a foundational theology that we need to hold to, that God is the only God. You shall have no other gods before me. He is the only God, the one and only. And so if we reject this idea, if we reject the idea and we say, well, I believe that Yahweh, the God of Abraham, the God of the Bible is real, but I also believe in this God, and this God, and this God, and this God. Why can't they all exist? Well, they can't. Logically, they can't, and also in reality, they can't. And by doing that, by rejecting the idea that God is God, that God is the only God, you reject Christianity. One of the ways that we see this happen is in the character of God, where, you'll read an Old Testament story or even a New Testament story. You read about Revelation. You read about Jesus when He talked about hell or the flooding of the earth with Noah. That there was this point in time where God looked on the earth and He saw the state of humanity, and that humans were so entrenched in their sinful and evil ways that He decided to flood on the earth and wipe out every single human except one family that He saw as good, and to hit this restart button. And some people will look at that story and they'll think about that action and they'll say to themselves, well, I can't see God doing that. The God I believe in wouldn't do that. It's like, that might be true, but then that's not the God of the Bible. And you're not a Christian. You have made a false image of God. You have watered down the God of the Bible. And they'll say, oh, well, that's a cruel thing for Him to do. No, it's a just thing for Him to do. Because God is justice. He is able to make those actions. He's able to make those judgments and those decrees. And that's one of the things, of the characteristics of God that we need to hold to. That God existed before everything else. That everything was made through Him. That He is all-powerful and all-knowledgeable and all-mighty, and that He's He's always been, and there's all these other things that we could dive into there, and they're wonderful things to study, and you should study them. But at the foundation is this idea that God is God, that there is no other God before him. And if you reject that, then you have rejected something that is not secondary. It is foundational. And by doing so, you have made yourself something other than Christian. And so, what you need to do is look in your own life and say, and have this prayer, have this conversation with God, the one and only. Say, Lord, do I understand you? Do I see you? Do I hold to you as you are seen in the Bible? And in times where I might be uncomfortable with the things that you've done, may I recognize that your character is absolute. Your ways are absolute. You are in control and you are God. Help me to see that and submit to that. That I would see you as God and that I would be okay with that. We need to have that as a foundation of our theological understanding as Christians, that God is God.